this year. Welcome to our September 3rd membership meeting. It is being recorded. Okay, so we always write down on our agenda to start the recording to make sure that we do that. So that we can show our meeting to other members that can't make it this evening, and so that Orhan and our speakers can also share it with those people that they want to. Tonight, we're going to be having Orhan Hosten-Mittermaier from Youth Power and his teacher and sponsor, Heather McLeod, talking to us. We'll have a financial report after their Orhan's presentation. There will be a time for Q&A, and Orhan will have to leave at 8 o'clock to do his rest of his homework tonight. And then we will have various committee reports. So at this time, I would like to invite Orhan up to the stage and Heather to talk with us.
Yeah. Thank you. So my name's Heather McLeod, and I get to tell the part about how Youth Power started. It was one of those pandemic things. I got an email saying, join the 90-day climate action challenge. What's a climate action project that you can do in 90 days? And it was about 4 years ago, almost exactly. So it was pretty clear, get a president who knows about the climate. And the people I know, because I'm a tutor and a teacher, is that I contacted all of the students I know because they were at home and they could write postcards. And so we started meeting weekly, talking about voter suppression, writing postcards. And by gum, we elected a new president. And then the month after that, we elected 2 new senators in Georgia. So the young people were feeling pretty full of themselves at this point, like we did a good job right away. So then we spent a little time learning about some more climate issues, and we were shocked when we read Project Drawdown. We did some work looking at their website to find out that refrigerants were a key. In fact, at the time, they were the #1 climate problem, that if we could tackle them, it would reduce, what is it? It would reduce the temperature by 0.5 degree in 100 years or something. It was a significant shock. So later on, some of the kids took that on as a project, and that's what Orhan is going to talk about. Some other projects they've done, though, have been planting trees. One of the projects we're about to take on is working with Fossil Free Berkeley. And they have a tax on the ballot to tax the large buildings on their methane pollution, to encourage them to stop polluting and electrify, but then also to use any money they get to help smaller buildings. And the reason I'm telling you this is that after about 3 years, I figured out that I couldn't keep up with the kids, that they had big goals, and Orhan will tell you about them, that I need more adults. And so I'm going to have a sign-up sheet for you because I don't have homework to do. And but we're building an adult auxiliary team to do some backup work. Thank you. And this is Orhan, who's part of our refrigerant project.
Oops. Hold on. It's weird. Is there a way for it not to be slanted?
Just click on it, or
No, I just mean with your
okay.
notes, like they were just on
No,
it.
there's not.
Maybe I can. Oh, that works. Yeah. Okay. Good.
To move
Just-
forward.
Yeah.
You have to move your copy.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
can just hold that. I can just hold it up.
Okay.
It's okay. All right. Good.
It's good to keep yourself in frame.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, hi everyone. My name is Orhan Hosten-Mittermaier, and thank you for that great introduction, Heather. Today I'm going to be talking about refrigerants, which, as we will soon learn, are the gases that are used to keep fridges cool. And my goal is to give you an overview of just how, like, what refrigerants are, what the problem is, and then also the work that we've done so far and that we're planning to do in the future in terms of replacing refrigerants with climate-friendly options. So first, a little bit about me. Right now, I'm a high school senior at the college preparatory school in Oakland, and that's just right through the tunnel by Lake Temescal. And I love all my classes, but specifically, I like physics and computer science. Those are some of my favorite interests. And the first photo I have is from my summer research internship this past summer at Caltech. But I'm also a competitive soccer player. Right now, I'm playing for my school team. I used to play for a club team. And then lastly, I'm a huge fan of the outdoors. So I love hiking, mountain biking, skiing, all of the above. I really like nature. But more importantly for today is my connection to Youth Power. So I got connected with Youth Power Climate Action, led by Heather primarily, in February 2023. So that's just over 1.5 years ago. And so I joined Youth Power. Heather invited me to Youth Power for their Stop Waste project, which was another kind of 3-month type project through a different organization. Here's a photo of me at the very first meeting, a much younger version of myself, along with Heather and Jeff, who's another adult who's been instrumental with Youth Power. And the reason I got connected with Heather is that we go to the same church together. But so after I decided to join for the project, we needed to figure out what our project would actually be. So, as Heather kind of alluded to, one of the first places we looked to was, are you all good? Okay. Just so it's not covered. Okay. One of the first places we looked to was Project Drawdown, which is this website that tracks some of the top climate solutions in terms of their impact on a short-term time scale and a slightly longer-term time scale. And what we noticed is that 2 of the top 10 kind of solutions, or quote unquote solutions, that were listed on Project Drawdown were related to refrigerants. You can see there refrigerant management and alternative refrigerants. And 1.5 years ago, we had never heard of refrigerants. But the fact that Project Drawdown made such a big deal out of them was intriguing. So we naturally wanted to learn more. And I'll take you through what we learned in our research. So let's explore what makes refrigerants such a big, but at the same time also such an addressable problem. Great. Refrigerants are the gases that are circulated in refrigerator piping to keep the fridges cool. So how that works is that you have pipes that run from the fridge outside, and the gas gets circulated and circulated, and it sucks up heat from inside the fridge and pumps it out to the air outside. And the result of that is that the heat gets taken out of the fridge, which leaves it cool. So the most common gases that are used for this purpose are called hydrofluorocarbons. That's a tongue twister. So for most of the presentation, I'm going to use HFC. That's going to be the most important acronym for the whole presentation. And these hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs, are man-made and in addition to being used in refrigerators, they're also used in cars and air conditioners. Additionally, HFCs are what are most commonly used in US, although we'll learn that that's not the case everywhere. And they were initially marketed as a replacement for chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, which was a refrigerant that depleted the ozone layer, and you might remember it from being one of the key ingredients that were in aerosols that got cracked down on in the past. So HFCs were marketed as this great replacement for chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs. But although they don't deplete the ozone layer, they are greenhouse gases. So we're going to do a little bit of trivia here to illustrate the impact of HFCs, the negative impact of HFCs. So the question is, what is the global warming potential of HFCs? And I'll explain what that means. The global warming potential is the amount of heat that a gas traps in the atmosphere per pound of that gas. And this whole scale is built off of carbon dioxide, which has a global warming potential of 1. So the question is, what is the global warming potential of most HFCs? And we're going to do a vote. So if you think the global warming potential of HFCs is between 3 and 15, raise your hand. If you think it's between 84 and 87, raise your hand. Okay. A couple hands. If you think it's between 200 and 300, raise your hand. Some more. And if you think it's between 3,000 and 4,000, raise your hand. All right. So we're pretty evenly spread, although we're trending toward the higher answers. The correct answer is 3,000 to 4,000. So what does that mean? It means that if we release just 1 pound of these HFCs, that's the same as releasing 3,000 pounds of carbon dioxide in terms of the amount of heat that it traps in the atmosphere. So clearly this is a potent greenhouse gas. So then the question becomes, how much of it are we releasing? So the next question is, how much of the refrigerant gas leaks out on average out of a commercial refrigerator every year? And ideally, the gas would just stay in the refrigerator, circulating around the pipes. But in practice, this isn't really true because gas leaks are very hard to find, and they're timely. It takes a lot of time to cover them up. So we're going to do one more round of trivia. If you think that on average, refrigerators lose 2% of their refrigerant per year, raise your hand. If you think it's 10%, raise your hand. If you think it's 25%, raise your hand. And if you think it's 40%, raise your hand. All right, this time we did better. It is 25%. So once again, we did better guessing, but that's not good. It means that 1/4 of the refrigerants on average is leaking out of each commercial refrigerator. And we learned that how potent those gases are. So to put this in context on the scale of the US, the greenhouse gas emissions from US supermarket refrigerators is equivalent to the carbon dioxide emissions from 14 million cars annually. And that is just about the number of cars that are registered in California. So all of California's cars, the greenhouse gas emissions are equivalent. And it's important to note that supermarket refrigerators are not the only place where HFCs are used. You might be wondering whether your own fridge uses them. That's not the case, luckily. Personal use fridges almost exclusively use propane, which is one of the best alternatives that we want to switch to, especially newer ones. So that's great. But industrial refrigeration needs for manufacturing or keeping other stuff other than food cool are often use HFCs as well. And that's not taken into account when I'm displaying this statistic here. So That was a lot of bad news. Now it's time for some kind of good news. So as we learned, once they're emitted, each pound of HFCs trap a lot of heat in the atmosphere. But they only exist in the atmosphere for around 14 years. So after that, after about 14 years, they degrade. For reference, carbon dioxide stays in the atmosphere for 300 to 1,000 years, so a much longer time. And what that means is that if we stop emitting all of our HFCs now, then 14 years down the line, the problem will be resolved. And the HFCs that we've released in the past won't be trapping heat in the atmosphere anymore. And so this is the reason why this climate solution has the potential to have such a quick impact compared to other strategies that are trying to cut carbon dioxide use or emissions. And that's completely not to say that we shouldn't cut CO2 emissions as well. It's just this is a potential solution for a quicker impact in the short term. Okay, so how do we actually make a difference? The goal, as you may have guessed, is to phase out these HFCs and replace with some of the better alternatives. And these alternatives include ammonia, propane, and carbon dioxide, which are all much simpler molecules. I know it's a little bit confusing that carbon dioxide is used there, but the scale of how much gas is emitted is much less than our other CO2 emissions. It's just that the HFCs are so potent. And these three we call natural refrigerants. So that's how I'll be referring to the better alternatives for the rest of the presentation. And the good thing is that we know that these exist and that they work amazingly well. So in the EU, they're ahead of us, predictably. And they're already most of the way there in terms of phasing out HFCs. And have shown that these three alternatives, ammonia, propane, and specifically carbon dioxide, work really well, even for large-scale fridges. So the way that they accomplished this is with legislation that required stores to switch their refrigerants. And the US is moving in that direction, but in our opinion, it's not quick enough. So in 2025, just at the start of this next year, the sale of some of the most common HFCs is going to be banned in California. And California is ahead of the rest of the country on this legislation. But there's a workaround, which is that stores are now stockpiling up all of the HFCs that they can get, anticipating this policy. So while at some point that will start to kick in by raising the prices on HFCs because the supply is going down, that won't necessarily be extremely soon. So great, we have this goal. Why isn't everyone switching right now? What's the barrier? The barrier is that switching to natural refrigerants requires that you update basically your whole refrigeration system because the gases have different properties. So you need new pipes, you need new valves, you need new refrigerator cases, all of that. So for a new store that's just starting up, that's just building its refrigeration, they're a lot of the time using natural refrigerants because they don't have this baseline that they have to replace. And the new systems, they leak less, so you don't need to buy refrigerant as often, and they're actually more energy efficient. So it's just more cost effective. But the problem is with existing stores, which really have no serious monetary incentive to switch their refrigeration if it works fine, or even if it doesn't work great, but it's so expensive to switch that they just keep working with what they have anyway. And so that's what they're trying to tackle. That's what we're trying to tackle. Excuse me. So after learning all of this, we decided that we were going to be a part of the change. We didn't think that the legislation was moving fast enough, and we're also working on legislative efforts. But yeah, we decided to take action. So right about now, you might be wondering, that's great and all, but what actually is that action? I want to hear. Well, that's what I'm going to talk about now. So I like to split what we've done into 3 phases. And the first of those 3 phases is auditing. So what I mean by that is that we had to gather data on what refrigerants the stores in our area were using to figure out whether they're actually even using these HFCs. And this information, the information of what refrigerant stores are using, is actually pretty publicly available within the refrigerator cases. So next time you go to the grocery store, if you look at, I'll try and do a diagram. If you look at a refrigerator case, this white label that I'm showing on the slide is going to be usually at the top left corner, kind of looking up. So sometimes it can be a little hard to find, but the info is generally there. So because of this, we organized a bunch of what we call refrigerant scavenger hunts, where Youth Power members would all meet up at a cafe and then spread out for an hour and a half and each go to different stores and survey as many of them in the surrounding area to see what refrigerants they were using. So many of our Youth Power members are based in Alameda. So our focus has been primarily there, but we also surveyed stores in Berkeley, El Cerrito, and Oakland, which is closer to my area, and some of the other members as well. And I think more stores throughout the Bay. And what we found is that the majority of these stores are using HFCs, in fact. And that's independent of whether it's a big store like Safeway or Trader Joe's, or a small convenience store. 1 second. Oh, that's later. Sorry. Yeah, so the store size basically had no effect on whether they were using HFCs or not. There were a couple of exceptions to this trend where there were stores that had some of the better alternatives. And to commend this, we gave them our own homemade awards for climate smart refrigerators. So that's the photo up on the slide. And the rest of the stores, and we're glad that there's a bunch of them, are stores that we can work with, that we can address. If all the stores were already using natural refrigerants, I wouldn't be here today doing this presentation. So after this auditing step, we move on to phase 2, which is connection. So for us, connection means informing the public about the issue of refrigerants. So that's what I'm doing here with you all. But in other campaigns to raise awareness, we've hosted other informational events at public libraries, for example. And we've also presented at multiple different churches around the area, including my own church. So I have a photo from that. And we've also connected with local news outlets and have been featured in articles to reach a wider audience. But they were mainly pretty small journals, I guess you could say. And although we've had this success, we also want to reach out to larger media, like larger news as well, to try and get it publicized. So that's how we connect with the public on this issue. And then lastly, this is the last phase, is replacement. And this is where we've been spending most of our time because it's our ultimate goal. We want to replace HFCs with natural refrigerants. This step is also the most challenging. And although we're still working on phase 2 on publicizing the issue, replacement is really where we're focusing a lot of our time at this point. So the first step for replacement is to contact and get in touch with grocery store managers, because they're the ones who can actually make the decision to switch their refrigerators out. And at smaller stores, we've had much more success with this. We've just often been able to walk in, request a manager, and talk to them immediately. But this has been predictably a lot harder at larger stores where managers sometimes aren't even in or are off-site. Who knows? However, once we get in touch with the managers, no matter if it's a big store or a small store, we talk to them about their refrigeration, see what they know, and if they're aware of the issue. And the wild thing is that even dedicated refrigerator or refrigeration managers that we've met sometimes haven't known about the negative impacts of HFCs on the climate in terms of being a greenhouse gas. So I think that's very illustrative of the point that we need to publicize this issue more. Okay, so now there's a distinction between what we do with large stores and small stores. At larger stores like Trader Joe's and Safeway, once we've connected with a manager, we know that they're generally financially able to replace their refrigeration. It's just a question of them choosing not to or choosing to do so. So for these stores, our tactic has been pressuring them into switching their refrigerants. So in connection with the specific Trader Joe's in Alameda, we got word from them that they were thinking about replacing their fridges, but that they weren't sure what they were going to replace it with. And they were quite likely considering not moving to natural refrigerants, but rather some sort of mid-level refrigerant that was maybe 2,000 global warming potential or 1,500. So to combat this, we collected physical signatures. We had people sign just physical paper to demonstrate our desire that they use natural refrigerants instead. And then this group of 10 of us all got together. These are mostly Youth Power members. And we took those physical signatures, we spread it around the 10 of us, and we all went into the Trader Joe's, got in touch with it, went up to the manager's desk, and each individually gave them the signatures that we had. And as a result, I can't say it's wholly due to us, but we like to think so. They decided that they would switch to natural refrigerants. So we take that as a huge win. We're celebrating that as a big win. They are currently working on getting the permits to work on their building, but as soon as they have those, they'll be switching out their refrigeration for a transcritical carbon dioxide system, and that's the gold standard. So we're really excited about that. We're going to celebrate them as soon as it happens. We're going to host a big party for them. And yeah, we're really pumped. So now we move on to how we support small stores. And this looks very different. So at small stores, managers are often much more excited about the possibility of replacing their refrigeration for the for better alternatives because it's good for the climate. However, a lot of the managers expressed to us that the cost of this type of project prohibits them from doing so. It's just too high for them to take on themselves, to shell out a bunch of cash for all the equipment. So for these stores, we concentrate our efforts on how we can support them in finding the resources they need to replace their refrigeration. Instead of using the stick, we're trying to use the carrot. And so one aspect of how we achieve that is we table often just out on the street or in stores, and have started a fundraising campaign that intends to support small stores in switching their refrigeration. And so far we've raised $5,000, which we're very happy about. But because of the scale of these projects, that's not enough to help even one store with a large scale refrigeration replacement. So we're looking to raise more funds there. And so now I want to give one example of a specific store that we've established a tight connection with, which is a store in Alameda called Alameda Natural Grocery. And they've expressed to us that they're heavily interested in updating their refrigeration. We've been talking with them for about a year about this. And in trying to get them to switch their refrigeration, we've connected them with various HVAC companies from around the area that are actually willing to install natural refrigerant systems, which is not a given. Not every company will go out there and work on a project that to make a new carbon dioxide system. So we've worked with them to get price quotes for a project that seems manageable to them. And right now we're trying to get them through the last steps of actually going through with it. And that's what we're working on with them right now. And at the same time, we're also very excited about a California grant that has just come out that funds refrigeration projects specifically. And we're researching what we need to apply to that grant and passing all of this information on to Alameda Natural Grocery. So we're really excited about that as well. And we want to get in contact with other small stores because now that we have this bank of information, we can connect them with the same HVAC companies that we already know are willing to do natural refrigerant projects. We can connect them with the information that they need to fill out the grant. So that's kind of our steps moving forward. We're going to lobby to the larger businesses to get more successes like we did with the Trader Joe's in Alameda. And then we're going to continue to try and handhold smaller stores through the same process. So, oh, I see. This was another photo. This is a photo of us tabling. Okay. So to wrap it up, I want to encapsulate the different ways that you can help us out because we're constantly in need of help. And there's three main ways you can support us. One is to check out our website. We love to get more people, looking at the work we do, learning about the work we do, learning about the climate issues we try and tackle. And so you can learn about some of the other projects that we're doing that are focusing on curbing climate change as well. The next way you can support us, and this is one of the most crucial, is get in contact with us. We want you to get in contact with us. Whether that is if you know youth who you think would be interested in joining us. Okay. It would be amazing to get connected with them. And we'd love for you to email the email that's on screen and connect us with any youth that you think might be interested. We also want people who have experience writing grants because, as I mentioned, there's this grant that's coming out and it would be great to have someone who's experienced in that sector, possibly to help us out. We also, as I mentioned, want to get connected with more smaller stores. So if you know of a store, and that could be, really any size, could be a tiny little convenience store, could be a bigger grocery store, who you think might want to update their refrigeration and who could use our help with the information that we have, connect us with them. Or if you want to get involved with yourself, as Heather mentioned at the start, we could definitely use more adult volunteers as well. So if any of those apply to you, we'd love it if you email us up there. We'll be checking or come and talk to me or ask questions after the presentation. And then finally, of course, it helps if you support our fundraising campaign. So at the very bottom, and thank you, Barry, for moving the Zoom stuff out of the way. We have the QR code to our fundraising campaign. So once we're doing questions, I'll leave this slide up so you can access that. Lastly, I want to give a couple of thank yous. So first, I want to give a huge thank you to Heather, Bella, and Jeff. Heather is, of course, here. You met her. Bella is one of the other lead teens in Youth Power and has been great working with her on the refrigerant transition project. And Jeff is another adult who's been instrumental with connecting us with churches and just supporting the project overall, as well as the rest of Youth Power. I also want to give a huge thanks to my grandparents, Steve Viglione and Marilyn Powers. I saw them on Zoom earlier. They're watching. For bringing me to Sustainable Rossmoor meetings, giving advice on the projects, and connecting me with the Sustainable Rossmoor leadership. And then lastly, I want to give a thanks to Amanda, Margot, Barry, Pam for having us present here, and for all of you for being an amazing audience. So thank you.
Okay, now we'll take questions both from the audience here as well as on Zoom. We'll start with Carol. Please speak into the microphone.
I looked up online while you were talking and noticed that it's Nancy Skinner who wrote that law in 2022. Have you been in touch with her?
We actually met
Great.
with the her climate legislation advisor, who's specifically, thinking about all of the policies that are in play right now and might get passed. So we, in conjunction with an organization that I'm forgetting right now, we talked to that policy analyst and got great news that she's going to be supporting a lot of the new bills that are up on the chopping block.
I would suggest that you mention to them that you could benefit, they and you could benefit from publicity. They know how to connect with all the newspapers and TV.
Mhm.
And also they have grant writers on staff. So
Okay.
if you didn't already know that.
Okay, so thank you for that. That's awesome questions.
Okay, we have a question from on Zoom. Don McGregor asks, how familiar are HVAC contractors with eco-friendly refrigerants?
It definitely varies. Some of the For the large scale businesses, most of them know about it. It's just some of them don't want to work on those systems, maybe because they're just more familiar with the HFC systems. At the more grassroots level, I'm not as sure. I tend to think if it's more of an individual practice, if that person is climate conscious, then they'll often know about natural refrigerants and be aware of that.
Okay, this is related. How frequently do the HVAC contractors currently do conversions from HFCs?
It's not super common for because of the barrier that I outlined earlier, which is that it's really expensive to switch existing systems out. So unless it's really necessary, most grocery stores don't reach out to contractors in the first place to do some kind of change like that. Thank you.
I'm an engineer, but I'm not immediately involved in this, but I'm enjoying this. To me, coming from old time growing up, it was Freon or R22. Is that the two that you're talking about?
So I
Ever heard of those?
I believe Freon is gone now. I think
Yep.
that was one of the chlorofluorocarbons that was phased out. R22 is most definitely still in play. The other common ones are R404A and 507.
Because I replaced some HVAC units for my house. I had 3 of them in Georgia where you
Okay.
really need it.
Yeah.
They could interchange those. It wasn't that big of a change out. So, and all the new stuff was R22. But another question, just having a refrigerant's just one part of it. The other is how efficient is that refrigerant and how much power do you have to compress it with to get the job done?
Yeah.
Is there an efficiency difference to where maybe, R22 is more efficient than going with propane or CO2, and therefore you're looking for a longer term power bill as well?
I believe that the transcritical CO2 systems are actually quite efficient. They, in addition to the lower greenhouse gas emissions, I believe one of their main selling points is that they are more efficient. And without getting into the technical details too much, I think that the way they keep the carbon dioxide at very low temperatures overall, and that helps out the process of compressing. And
There's a big part of electrification in the IRA. Thank you, Joe Biden. And that's to go electric. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're always going to be electric here, but if you go from a air conditioning compressor to a heat pump, you can get a tax rebate on that. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Can you get a tax rebate at all if you go to a more efficient refrigerant? Because that's basically what's going on there.
So I don't know of tax rebates in the US. I don't think it's a thing yet. I believe that heat pumps as a replacement for, I guess, are you mentioning gas furnaces or electric heaters is
And
more of like a
inefficient air conditioners too.
Yeah, is more of a well-established system and a well-established technology, more so than refrigerants in the US.
Have you called, this is terrible now, the inconvenient truth guy? He'd love this.
Mark, you only have one more question left.
Oh, I have a carbon credit?
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Two questions. Oh, with having independent contractors who are going in and doing these things, could you coordinate with some of the companies that sell these conversion kits or things like that to give free trainings to those people that then those local workers could market as, I can do this kind of conversion for you. I can convert your home, because people are very aware of how how efficient their home is and things like that. But this would give them a marketing technique. And if you could somehow connect them with the companies who are willing to train them for free, and maybe even give them some free, help on marketing and things, I think that's a possibility too, to look into. The other thing is going back to the heat pumps, which is really big in this whole place.
Yeah.
I know that I just had to have two replaced from the 60s.
Mhm.
Okay. And if those had been losing all of this, that's why they weren't working, of course, right? All this each year they're losing one.
Mhm.
Are the new ones, and I think it's at R410A, is that good? Or from what I'm looking up, it's not good and won't be phased out for a few more years.
Yeah. It's so if you know that it's R410A, that's probably not one of the better ones. And new systems, if you're getting a new system, that's going to be leaking less. And the scale is just much, much, much smaller than in grocery stores. So a building heat pump, I don't know exact numbers, but the pounds of gas that are being used in those systems is going to be minute compared to these big grocery store places where they're using hundreds, if not thousands of pounds in one store. So, yeah.
So I have a couple things in my mind. It's a strange thing. So bear with me. Everybody now is at least trying to greenwash. The big companies are trying to greenwash. And so the branding issue is kind of a big deal, and climate goals are a big deal, for big companies. It seems to me that positioning this effort as a branding opportunity for large organizations could be powerful. There's something called, maybe you're familiar with it, Orhan. It's called the diffusion of innovations. It was a study that was done back in the 70s by Everett Rogers. Anyway, he studied how innovations move through a socially linked group.
Okay.
And there's a predictable curve. It's a bell curve. And I'm sure you've heard the term early adopter, and early majority, late majority, all of that. And, starting with the innovators. So, if big companies started to pursue this as a way, and it sounds like the impact would be very great, actually, to reducing their footprint.
Yeah.
So, and if that was started by enough people, then it starts to move through the entire group much more rapidly, and you don't have to work so hard. You work on the first 20%. And if you pass that 20% mark, then the system self-organizes for the rest of the population. So that's one idea that occurred to me.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing is just a wild question. How is the CO2 or the CO2 alternative sourced? We have a lot of extra CO2 in the atmosphere. It occurs to me. I'm wondering if there is a closed loop opportunity there in some way.
That's a good question, and it's definitely something I'm going to need to look into. Okay. Yeah.
So my first job out of college, working at a company called Air Products, take this off. Keeps echoing in my ear. And they separate air into its constituent parts by cooling it down. So the first thing in air that freezes out is carbon dioxide. So it's separated out by chemical processing or mechanical processing, and it's sold as a product that way. So quick, easy, quick answer.
So it sounds like it's possible.
Yeah.
So Orhan, I'm very intrigued with your work with the Trader Joe's in Alameda
Mhm.
because they are a big chain with money to spend. And I'm wondering if you got a sense from them that they would be discussing their new project with their refrigeration system with, corporate headquarters and.
So it seemed relatively enclosed just to the Trader Joe's in Alameda. We are trying to have them make a bigger deal out of it to other Trader Joe's around the area, and just more generally. The weird thing is that Trader Joe's specifically has not been super willing to publicize the fact it publicized its efforts to become more climate friendly. Um, we think that they think they're running the risk of politicizing it and losing customers because of that. I don't know whether that's a good strategy, but overall, let's see. Yeah, they don't seem to be making a huge deal out of it overall. Just this individual location in Alameda and just more generally Trader Joe's as a company is not, yeah, is sometimes doing climate friendly initiatives, but not, publicizing it and making it heard.
Yes.
Hi, so I love this presentation. So I have a bunch of questions, but the biggest one I think is how widespread is the problem in other lots of small businesses which you haven't mentioned, such as fishing boats, semi-trailers that carry frozen food. A lot of these are they use a lot of refrigeration, and they're all over the place. They're not, you don't find them in one place. One grocery store might have a dozen of these things.
Mm-hmm. Good rule of thumb is that if it's bigger than a house fridge, it's probably using HFCs.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if there's any way you could reach out to those kinds of places too.
Yeah. I think we would love to. Partially the reason we started with grocery stores is it's kind of the most accessible in terms of just there being brick and mortar locations you can go to and talk to a manager. And especially with our limited manpower, that's where we've been focusing. But yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing, you said that the gold standard is actually very efficient. I'm wondering, have you ever brought them an analysis of how much money they would actually save every year? Because that's how long does it take to amortize, to start making a profit on that?
It would be a while. It's more the energy savings are more of a factor when there's a new store starting up. If they're comparing technologies, then they're going to go for an energy efficient one, which most likely in this case is going to be carbon dioxide, which is great. It means that they're starting with natural refrigerants. But for an existing store to switch, it's the cost of the project is most likely going to majorly outweigh the energy efficiency gains that they might recoup.
Yes, I really appreciate your presentation, and I wondered, I don't know about youth power and how extensive its influence is, but it seems to me that the model that you have is extremely repeatable. And when you talk about Oakland, Berkeley, that's a little small cosmos. This is a bigger one. Mm-hmm. And you've involved youth in a very active way that really mobilizes them, I think. So is there a way in which youth power can establish maybe a communication network
Mhm.
that, for instance, I've just moved here from Santa Fe. That would let Santa Fe know,
Yeah.
let other places know this project is repeatable
Mhm.
and it can enlist youth's power
Mhm.
in accomplishing what you have done so well here. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Partially, that's why we want to get to bigger scale news outlets and to publicize, to be able to publicize the fact that we're doing this work. That's one of our main goals with that.
So I know your generation, and by and large is more in tune with social media than newspapers. So, do you have a presence in social media?
We are starting an Instagram as we speak. Yes. Well, yeah, we're trying to build that right now.
Are you interested in potentially working with other schools?
So a lot of the students we're working with in Youth Power, like our whole group is from a lot of different schools. Many of them are in Alameda High School and Encinel, which is the other Alameda High School. I'm personally at a very small school, so I've tried to reach out and I will more, but I'm trying to get students involved there as well. Partially so like we do already have students from different schools. And I also agree with you. I think we can reach out more as well.
Part of the question was my niece is at Marin Catholic.
Okay.
She's the director of admissions.
Mhm.
And I don't know how interested they are in this sort of thing, but after this, maybe you can give me your contact information and I
Sure.
can pass it along to her, and maybe Marin
Yeah.
Catholic has a group.
Definitely. Yeah. I'd love to.
Yes, so, are you done? Okay, yeah, so regarding this new law, now, so there's going to be a tax on large buildings and large businesses that will help subsidize the smaller ones. So are you bringing that into your presentations to say, look, this is coming, get in touch with the state and, you'll be able to switch over easily, or you can avoid this tax, all these things, just put it in part of the cost
Yeah.
benefit stuff.
So I think you're referencing what Heather mentioned at the start of the presentation. That was not for refrigerants specifically. And in fact, they're actually not taking refrigerants into account there when they say polluters. I believe it's just methane from maybe natural gas usage, heating, that kind of stuff.
Could you describe how you work together? Do you have regular meetings? Are you on Zoom? What happens? How do you organize yourselves?
For Heather organizes it.
And Heather, want to?
For a long time, we were doing weekly Wednesday Zoom meetings. Just more recently, Bella, Heather, and I have been just the three of us organizing our own small meetings on Saturdays or whenever during the week when we need to check in. Our connection with the larger Youth Power, which is not that large, is mostly through our events, which like we had one this past weekend where we were in Alameda in the public library and at South Shore Mall by the Trader Joe's. So there we see and coordinate with some of the slightly less active Youth Power members. But yeah.
In your research, did you come across legislation? I believe it started in Germany, or certainly it was in Europe, about refrigerants for trucks, the big trucking, food and other things that they have to truck through across country lines. Because I know that the way I heard the story, and I may have contorted it because it's an old information in my head,
Yeah.
but it was that the Germany outlawed particular kind of refrigerant. Are you familiar with this? And and so because it was a hub for a lot of different countries all around, and they all did business, almost all did business in Germany.
Yeah.
All the countries all around had to change their refrigerant. So I can give you the name and contact of a man who, before he retired, was involved with this in the U.S. But he was trying to leapfrog off the European experience.
That's great. I hadn't heard about that yet. Yeah.
I had a European comment. Did you know that Trader Joe's is owned by Aldi, which is a German company? Maybe
think I
there's
did.
quite the connection.
I think I did know that. Yeah.
Did you also know that the world headquarters for Safeway, which I think is part of a bigger company now, is Pleasanton? Do you know where that is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Huge.
Mhm.
Don't forget Walmart. They're the world's largest grocer.
We've reached out, Heather. Yeah. Heather, we've reached out to the Safeway in Pleasanton, right? You know, the Safeway management. No?
All right, we'll take one more question and then we'll let Orhan do his homework.
I'm always impressed whenever I come to a meeting in Rossmoor of just how smart the people are who live here and what knowledge they have. And I really appreciate all of you helping Orhan appreciate the knowledge of seniors. But I am just feeling so good about what's coming behind. And Orhan, you just did a phenomenal job. And it sounds to me like you are been supported by a phenomenal church, but you didn't mention which church that might be.
Yes, I'm at the First Unitarian Church of Oakland.
Oh, really?
So
Oh, very good.
Dick and Heather both occasionally go there as well.
Well, thank you very much, Orhan and Heather,
Thank you.
for your phenomenal presentation. I'll give you an A+ on your Google document skills, your ability to present. Very, very well done. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. And we'll be sure to put this scan to donate. We'll send out an email to our membership and we'll also be sending them the YouTube link. So thank you again. Okay. Now I can't. Use it. Next up, we have Adrian.
Talk about money. So just so we all know, basically last month we spent about $100. Our bank balance remains. That should read bank balance as 31 August, sorry. It's basically the same as it was. And our membership, 4 people joined the club last month. So 43 have joined this year so far. And 29 joined last year, 104 have joined over the last 10 years. We have quite a few members who joined in 2014, Marcia, for example. You know, we celebrated our 10th anniversary last month. And
Wow.
yeah, well, and I will say, because I am involved with the Golden Rain Foundation that sort of runs the place in many ways. I'm on the finance committee. And when Sustainable Rossmoor, when we say something, they listen. We do make a difference. And it's because of some of the work that was done back in 2014 and 2015, 2016, getting the original solar array put in place Okay, we have that 1 megawatt solar array up by MOD. That came out of the people who started this organization. It wasn't me. It was a bunch of other people. And as a result of that, because that's saving everybody here literally hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. As a result of that, and they're saying, oh, okay, everybody sort of recognizes that Sustainable Rossmoor actually thinks about things that comes up with ideas that are reasonably good and are worthwhile. And so, so our membership, you mentioned there's smart comments. Well, yes, indeed, there are. Anyway, so all of you here, of course, obviously have joined, and we will be renewing in about 2 months. So after that, let me turn it over to Carol. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. This is the film for next Wednesday, not tomorrow, but the next Wednesday. We always have our films on the second Wednesday in Peacock Hall. And this is a locally produced film by partly funded through Save Mount Diablo and other local environmental organizations. And it's just been released to the public. So I think we'll all enjoy it. It reviews some major fires that occurred about 4 years ago in part of the Diablo Range, and then the rain that followed and created horrible damage that was maybe worse than the fire, and then what the I want to say park managers, but the rangers and other people that are responsible for land management have done since then to be able to be better prepared for the future. So this is a local film, but with international implications. I also want to mention that next month, our first Tuesday meeting, will be a film. And we're not going to tell you what film, but it will involve some discussion. It's a shortish film so that there'll be time for discussion. Get to stand away from the podium. No, even
The Zoomers will see you if you speak into the.
Not sure that that's necessary, but anyway. So, so Brad is not here tonight. He's on Zoom. Hi, Brad. So COP24 is our Protect Our Planet 2024 Committee of Sustainable Rossmoor. We're working on the November election. And we have prioritized working with the Environmental Voter Project, which is an extraordinary organization that turns climate first voters into consistent voters, the ones who really don't vote. They care about the climate, but they actually don't vote. If you can imagine there are people like that, there are millions of them. So EVP works on that population to turn them into consistent voters. So that's why we are so passionate in our committee about supporting EVP. So Brad and Dan McGrath, who's sitting in the back there, are trainers for EVP phone banking, and we just want to encourage the heck out of you to overcome whatever barriers you might have in your mind about phone banking, and just jump into it and start doing it. The closer we get to the election, the better the lists are, because they've been cleaned up, and the more people you'll actually get to talk to and make a difference with. So we provide all the training and support you could need for that. So please do contact Brad or Dan or me. I can channel you that way. And specifically speaking of high school students, are you inspired? I am inspired by this young man. Heather, what an amazing thing you're involved in. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts And we need more. I'm getting goosebumps. We just need more of that. So we are recruiting high school students right now for EVP phone banking. And we actually have a new one on Saturday. Guess why? A very highly committed, passionate 17-year-old girl who cannot yet vote wanted to make a difference. And she said, if you have your phone bank at 3:30 in the middle of the week, I'm not going to be able to do it. But if you do it on Saturday, I can do it and I can bring my friends. We now have a Saturday phone bank. So our channel into this is high school teachers. Okay. So if you know any, please let us know, because we want to send high school teachers information about how to recruit their students and channel them into this phone bank. And people do not need to be 18, right? This is younger kids can be involved in this. Very exciting. So anyway, please do that if you know any, because we're getting closer to the election, folks. It's this, let's get a grip here. Things are looking better for us, at this point, but we can't take anything for granted. Remember, it's all about those few votes in those few swing states. We have to figure this out very strategically. So, everything we can do to work on that is going to make a difference. So please lean in one way or another. So if you like the idea of what EVP is doing, which is getting people out to vote who care about climate, but who don't vote, and donating to them is an incredibly powerful thing to do. So our member, Barry Bryan, right here, past president, is personally matching donations to EVP for their annual fundraiser. Totally awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Although before I get into that, I see Brad had his hand raised. Brad, unfortunately, the group cannot hear you, but the Zoomers can hear you. I can relay possibly if you wanted to say something.
Yeah, but if you'd relate to the audience that last Saturday at the youth-led EVP phone bank.
Last Saturday at the youth-led EVP phone bank,
And both Orhan and Heather attended.
Orhan and Heather attended. Oh, and 3 other youths.
Oh, how exciting is that? Let's get the synergy going. All right. Thank you, Brad. Very cool. Okay, Barry, do you want to say something about your match?
So EVP, Environmental Voter Project, has a annual fundraiser, and it's coming up on Thursday. You can attend it. I'll be sending out to all the members the link again. It was sent out a few weeks ago, but I'll send it out again because it's coming up. So far, of that $1,000 offered as a match, only $335 has been taken advantage of. So I'm feeling like money's burning a hole in my pocket. There's another $665 that you can get matched if you. Oh, here we go. Okay, another $20.
Oh, thank you, Heather. Thank you.
Okay, Heather, thank you so much. So this, do I hear 40? So anyway, it's a great organization. There's a lot that we can do for this election, but all these places that we're focused on are focused on the swing states. A 44,000 swing here and there can make the difference in the election, and so we're very surgical in where we're very focused on where we place our efforts, but they do make a difference. So. You'll get these slides tomorrow in the mail. You can click there, or you can raise your hand and I'll text you the link if I have your phone number, or you can text me. I guess that's easier. Text me at that number, and I'll text you a link so that you can make an online donation, which is more automated way for me to match it. But I will make sure that Heather's $20 is matched as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Even $25, would make a difference when we pool all the money. So please consider donating to EVP. Very worthy way for Sustainable Rossmoor members to really make a difference in this upcoming election. So another thing that we're focusing on, I hadn't imagined that when I started this committee back in January, but we have a very, very interesting and important race locally going on for our state Senate district. And Marisol Rubio is running against the incumbent, Tim Grayson. But he was. I'm sorry. He has a record as an incumbent, but not in the Senate. Thank you so much. Takes a village, right? So especially at our age. So anyway, he accepts a lot of money from fossil fuel interests and other big business. And the thing that worries me the most, I mean, that's very worrisome, but even more so, he just sits out all the important climate elections. He doesn't vote conveniently, right? Yeah, that's his behavior. And it kind of is his true colors, right? He's a former Republican, became a Democrat just to get elected, that's my editorial. But that's what it appears, from his behavior. So it turns out it's really, really important that we have a genuine environmentalist as our state senator. And so Marisol is that. And we are, there are many ways to support her. Go online to her website, which is, you can see marisolforca.com, Marisol for CA, California. So you can donate there. You can buy a t-shirt there. And more of our t-shirts are walking around Rossmoor. Imagine, yeah, we have several other in the audience tonight. But we're also doing something very special. And as a result of Dan McGrath's initiative, we will be running a postcarding event for Marisol on September 17th. And that will be in multipurpose room number 3 at Gateway from 2 to 4. Oh, geez. I'm sorry. Why did I think it was 2 to 4? I know, it's my mistake. Okay. So I'm probably taking too long. Barry thinks I'm just way over talking. Okay. So 4 to 6, everybody, 4 to 6 that day on the 17th. Okay. So do come for that. So, and also attend POP 24. Our next meeting is on that same day in the morning at 11. And see me if you want to find out even more opportunities for your activism. Thank you for listening.
Sign up. I'm reminded about the party, proposed party on the clipboards back at the table.
There's all the information right there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Has everyone had a chance to read that? And that brings us to EV charger issues. I have been receiving a number of emails from Rossmoor residents about their frustrations with attempting to charge their EVs at the various places within Rossmoor that are open to the public. These are residents that are unable to charge at home, particularly in Mutual One, I think is one of the places where they can't do that. A couple of months ago, we'd heard from Adrian just how many more electric vehicles are being registered here in Rossmoor. And I think there will be more in the future, and there will be additional increased frustration. At the moment, there is no budget item in the GRF budget for additional EV chargers at the community facilities. And GRF not currently considering change to the policy that allows non-charging vehicles to park in EV charging spots. This is a huge source of frustration for a couple of the individuals that I've heard from. I know that they've written to the Rossmoor News, sort of playing with other Rossmoorians, could they please leave those spaces open? But those always are in the prime spot right next to the building. So they haven't seen much help with that. And then the other frustration I hear about is that often that the charging stations aren't working. So I actually called up Shell Recharge. I don't use them. They weren't able to share a lot of information with them because I'm not an admin, and it's very unclear who is the owner of these things and who they report to. But she was willing to share with me that a lot of the issues when the charges aren't working is because of user error. Things like they've left their ignition on, they've used the wrong charging cord. So that's what Brad and I've been able to discover so far. So one of the solutions that we are proposing at the moment is to write to the GRF board. GRF will not do anything to install additional chargers unless there is interest from the community. In the vicinity of 100 to 200, emails might move the needle for us. So if you do know someone or you have personally had some issues with the chargers, it'd be great if you could write to the board and describe your issues, request more chargers be put in, ask that the EV parking spaces be open all the time, only to EV cars. At the moment, they're open to everyone from, I think it's till 6 p.m. at night. And I have asked the Shell Recharge to send me more information, but I think we can also ask GRF, give people some training. They did an excellent job on the room reservation training. So possibly some more training for people that are using EV chargers, might result in less downtime. Often the EV charges can be reset remotely when you call the Shell Recharge number, but other times it requires that Shell Recharge reaches out to someone at MOD and they have to come and fix it. So I will be sending out an email blast to the entire membership so that we get more people aware that we are actively contacting GRF to see if we can get some further action on that.
Can I make a comment on charging?
Please.
I noticed you mentioned Mutual One. That's a sad political case.
Still people can't hear you.
Yeah.
We know that.
Mutual Two has had carport charging for 5 years. I ran my plug-in hybrid totally out of electricity, riding up to Monte Rio over the weekend. Came back on gas. I have a plug-in hybrid, and in about 18 hours in Mutual Two's carport, I was charged all the way back. So I've got about 25 chargers in Mutual Two. I've talked to 1 and 3 and everything. It's just a sad state of politics is what it is. And I certainly can lend some advice as to how we've done that mutual 2 since 2018.
Okay, well, legislative committee. The legislature has ended for the session. They ended at midnight on Saturday night, and we won't hear anything more from them until the first of the year. Well, they might introduce some bills in December, but anyhow, so our legislative package, 10 of the bills that we were supporting this year are on their way to the governor's desk. One bill that we opposed is also on the way. But some of the bills that we supported, if the governor signs them, would do some pretty important things. They would ban grocery stores from offering plastic bags. So no more paper or plastic. It would be paper or bring your own. Increase fees and impose other requirements for owners of idle oil wells. Require local government general plans to include a wildlife corridor element. Offer incentives for low-income drivers with high-polluting cars to replace them with zero-emission vehicles. Offer Healthy Soils Program grants. Require bi-directional EV charging. Increase incentives for installing solar in apartment buildings and schools, and require producers to be responsible for waste textiles. So those are some of the bills we've been working on, and now it's up to Governor Newsom. If we hear that maybe there's a problem and he might not want to support it, we might be calling on you guys to, send emails or call his office or whatever. But at this point, we don't know how he feels about these bills. So anyhow, that's what the legislative committee has been up to. We'll be back with a report next month telling you whether he signed them or not.
Great work.
That brings us to the end of our meeting. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. I sure enjoyed hearing from the youth of California.